sharing all of your amazing work with us growing up. It was very interesting and entertaining. Before I introduce our next guest, I have a couple announcements to make. The Penn State Nativism Club will be holding a 24-hour knit-a-thon in the Hub, first floor, starting at 9 a.m. this Friday to raise money and awareness for Darfur. For more information, see the Nativism Club table or speak to Sarah O'Donnell. Also, the Penn State United Students Against Sweatshops will be hosting a rally in support of the Employee Free Choice Act from 4 to 5 p.m. this Friday in front of Old Main. Before I introduce our next guest to you, I'd like to give you some brief background information. George Galloway first gained widespread notoriety for his fiery criticism of the U.S. and British UN Security Council sanctions of Iraq. These sanctions are well known in the Arab world for their catastrophic effects on the Iraq population that led to the deaths of many, including hundreds of thousands of children. Mr. Galloway was also one of the leading public figures protesting the Iraq War in the build-up to the invasion in 2003, which has left the country in shambles, with the U.S. now trying to install a loyal government. Mr. Galloway is a relentless critic of Israel and the supporters of the Palestinians. Just this month, he led an aid convoy of more than 100 vehicles to Gaza after the bombardment that left over 1,400 Palestinians dead and many more wounded. While most British politicians were talking about Israel's right to defend itself from the violence it provoked, Mr. Galloway was condemning the crimes of one of the world's greatest outlaw states and taking action to aid the impoverished and devastated Palestinian people. The lack of accurate and unbiased information on the conflict makes the presence of our speaker like him all the more important. Mainstream media organizations systematically omit key facts that don't fit the picture with the paint they wish. We are led to believe that all Palestinians are terrorists and that Israel acts humanely and only in self-defense. In an age when unwavering support of Israel is the hallmark of American politics, Mr. George Galloway stands as a moral example that the quest for hope, justice, truth, and equality can and should prevail. Please join me in welcoming our guest of honor, British MP George Galloway.
Thank you very much, Chair, distinguished professors, academics, students, activists, brothers and sisters. Wassalamu alaikum. Peace be on all of you. It's a great pleasure to be here this evening. In fact, I've turned out to be surprisingly welcome in what until 75 days ago was the less kind and less gentle North American state. In fact, the one part of North America in which I'm currently unwelcome is the country that used to be known as the kinder and gentler North American state. And I've spent much of the day talking to the media in Canada, where the decision of the right-wing dead end has been last outpost of Bushism government in Ottawa made last Friday, namely that I was inadmissible to their country because I was an aider and abettor of terrorism. Just a few days before, for the small price of $900,000, they had welcomed former President George W. Bush to give a public address in Calgary. I mention with that little conundrum because I think it's the theme of what we've heard so far this evening and what you'll hear from me over the next 60 minutes or so, which is, at its most charitable, a lack of clarity about what is terrorism and who are the terrorists, and at worst, a deliberate Orwellian distortion, where truth becomes lies, where wrong becomes right, and where insult is added to injury. So I want, in the words of Shawn, the photographer who spoke first, to help complete a picture which in your country, as well as mine, though it's worse in yours, is very far from complete. I want to deal with the question of who are the terrorists and what is terrorism. Because it seems to me, and I just said so live on Canadian television 1 hour ago, the narrative of the so-called war on terror has bankrupted the word terror of all meaning. If George Bush can be welcome and I can be banned because it is I who is the terrorist and not he, then this word no longer has any meaning. And I suspect that at least the intelligent, the more intelligent of those who use it, who are implicated in this narrative, know it well enough. George Bush had an excuse. He was an imbecile. You know, in my lifetime, it was still common to have maps in our schoolrooms in which so much of the world was painted in the color pink, not because Britain was like Vermont, a haven for equal rights for gay people, but because pink was the color of our empire. When I was at school, the teacher told us that Britain had an empire so vast that upon it the sun never set. When I came home and told my Irish grandfather what the teacher had said, he answered, "That's because God would never trust the British in the dark." In the years that followed, I traveled the length and breadth of that empire and saw what empire means. Of course, it's always dressed up in different, more flattering clothes. It's always for the benefit of its victims, you see. Poor savages, they, who have to be led by the hand by the superior white European colonizer to the sunny uplands, somewhere always distant, in which they can govern themselves and run their own economies for the interests of their own people rather than us. In George Orwell's first novel, Burmese Days, a little read and not well enough appreciated work, speaking through the hero of the book, a colonial official by the name of Jim Florey, Orwell, who was himself a colonial official in Burma, is chatting up a young woman, an odd chat-up line. He's talking about imperialism. He says, when all is said and done, imperialism is about going to other people's countries and stealing their things.